always right, but we're never wrong. As always, I'm Mark.
And I'm Hans, and welcome back, everyone, to the show. This is, what is this? This is officially, week one of the offseason now?
Yeah.
So we're kind of here, so...
Yeah, offseason, I think, starts next week, where they can start franchising and, I think, signing free agents or talking to free agents.
Yeah, so we're here. This is exciting. So me and Mark today are going to talk about two divisions, maybe some other general rambling, but go ahead and talk about some teams that we think, what we think their needs would be, things they're going to go after in off-season, maybe still bring up Deshaun and those guys still, because they're still relevant right now, and just kind of start doing it from our perspective of the off-season and what we think is going to unfold, and what we would do if we were in these team situations and stuff like that. So I'll let you lead the way, Mark, since you have your notes out.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned Deshaun Watson, talking about that. So yesterday, the newest report was Carolina coming in heavy. 3 firsts and Christian McCaffrey. So I asked the question last night. You know, everybody knows we have a group text with everybody that we talk to that talks football. They've all been on the show. And I asked the question of, if you're Houston, would you do that deal? Because an interesting point was made on a radio show that I listened to, and it was Jason La Canfora actually said it on The Fan, and he said that CMC is too overpaid, and he's technically, he said, he's on the back end of his career.
It's an interesting take.
And he said that it was, by the time Houston is relevant again, CMC's on his way out. And so I, just simply said, is 3 1s in CMC enough for Deshaun Watson? How many years do you think, CMC has and everything? And Nate had an interesting take. He said, I wouldn't do the deal. CMC's too overpaid. You already have an overpaid running back on your roster in David Johnson. And you need so much help that you can't really technically have an overpaid player on your team like that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting for me because before this year, CMC was the real deal. Like everybody, and I think he still is for a couple more years. I think he's easily could do 1,000 on any team.
But if you think about it, the running backs these days they've been dropping off a lot quicker than average, especially with how much they're used nowadays, right? So It's not that we can't use a running back like Emmitt Smith or somebody for their whole career, 20 years plus, but what teams are doing is they're getting their 5 or 6 years out of you, and they're dumping you off to the next guy.
Yeah.
If you are making that deal, Houston, the guy you talked about isn't not making sense. In a way, he does make sense because by the time Houston is relevant again, he'll be almost 31-year-old running back.
Yep.
And at this point, it's almost not worth it. And if you are Deshaun Watson, if I'm going to go to Carolina, I want CMC there.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I said if that deal's done and I'm Watson, I say CMC has to be there.
Yeah.
But Nate brought up a good point. He said Mike Davis actually had a very good season this year. Mm-hmm. He was, I believe, just under 1,000 yards rushing. He missed a few games because of injury, and because CMC played. Yeah. He caught the ball very well. He was a very good complement to what CMC brings. He's not CMC, but he was very serviceable.
I think in general, though, I agree with you, but I think with Christian McCaffrey, I think him alone is a 2 or 3 win swing because of how dynamic of both he is. That guy did good. He did really good running, really good catching, but CMC did both of those better. He's faster, he's harder to tackle, and he's just more reliable. So I can understand moving on from him, but at the same time, it's all that worth it when your team still to me doesn't seem like a playoff hunting team. Does that make sense?
If they get the quarterback, those wide receivers are very good. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and Curtis Samuel. And the defense is young and coached well. They played okay.
Yeah.
They weren't the best defense. They weren't even probably a very good defense.
I think they were somewhere in the top 15, top 20, if I remember correctly.
But it's just an interesting take. And this Deshaun Watson thing, I think, is going to get very crazy. Because I think they're going to request defense and not offense, and I think they're going to request more picks. I think 5 picks, not first. I think 2 or 3 firsts and a couple seconds are going to be the minimum of what they'll take for him. And the problem is the more you wait, the more that technically is going to go up. So it's going to be very interesting on that. But today we're going to talk about the AFC East and the AFC South. What these teams need to, to rebuild or to stay relevant. So first off, we'll start with the AFC East in Buffalo. Buffalo's an interesting team because if this isn't done right, because you have to pay Allen soon, your defense, yes, is going to be a year older, and it's going to be interesting what they do. They have 2 young running backs on their team. Neither are worth, to me, anything because they don't use them.
They technically have 3 if you count Yeldon.
Yeah, and you don't know what you have. Like, they don't use Singletary enough. He's shown flashes. They didn't use Moss nearly at all this year.
And they have somebody else, too. I can't think of who that is. They drafted 2 this year with Moss. Moss and somebody else. I can't think of what his name is either.
And since we don't... I mean, I didn't even know if he made the, roster or if he
was like
was
their 4th
playing.
or 5th round pick.
But, so my biggest thing for Buffalo is running back.
Yeah, I agree.
Time of possession, they did very well. I was actually shocked when I saw time of possession for Buffalo. They were a top 5 team in time of possession, over 30 minutes a game. But for me, their time of possession wasn't good enough when it mattered the most. Meaning when they had a lead, they couldn't keep the lead because they were giving up. They weren't staying on the field. Yeah. They had a good point differential and everything like that. So a lot of their games were either blowouts or very close.
So this is my thing with Buffalo, though, is it the running back problem, or is their problem more along the lines of their coach doesn't want to run the ball? Like their game plan, because when they do run the ball, they don't do it very well. So it makes me think, is it the running backs, but then the running backs don't play well, and then he doesn't call another run play the whole game.
Right.
It's almost like if you're going to draft a running back, you're going to go after an ETN, you're going to go after a Hubbard, a Breece Hall, one of these guys. You're spending a 1st round, maybe 2nd round pick on this guy, late 1st, early 2nd. That's when most of the running backs are taken. Are you going to be able to say, I have 3 running backs on my roster now, all under the age of 21, and can I even run the ball? Because I haven't seen it from Buffalo in 5 years. That's my thing.
And that's why it's sort of like, for me, even though I say it's their biggest need, it's almost a wasted pick.
Yes.
Because of what you've done the previous 2 years. Because Singletary, I believe, was a 1st round pick, 1st or 2nd round pick. Moss was a 1st or 2nd round. It was a 2nd round pick.
Early 2nd.
So the other things I do believe they need is depth on defense. Their defensive starters are very good, but they don't have any depth. So they get tired, and you can't keep up with a Kansas City. You can't play deep into the playoffs if you don't have depth, and they don't have any depth.
The only answer to depth is time of possession. So luckily they do own time of possession well, which means your defense stays off the field.
Yep.
The problem is, though, is when your offense isn't scoring, you're on the field a lot more, and that's when you need to put people in on 3rd and 4th down, and you don't have that personnel.
Right. Their wide receivers are very good. Cornerbacks are very good. Their skill positions are very good, except at running back, and I would say at tight end. They've spent some money in the, getting Tyler Kroft. I know people are like, who? But he was a free agent, and they signed him to a pretty good deal. It wasn't a top tight end deal, but he hasn't really panned out. And again, is it the offense? Or
Don't
is
they
it
have the other tight end too?
Which one?
Is it Knox? Is that his name?
Yeah, Knox.
I like him. Yep. We have Dawson Knox. Is that his name?
But they don't like somebody like if he would fall to them like Pitts, like a pass catching big tight end that could complement the middle of the field, sort of like what Aaron Hernandez and Gronk. I know Aaron Hernandez is a taboo name, but when he played, he was ridiculous, and he's going to be. And this kid Pitts is going to be very good. And if you could get somebody like him, the offense would become even more dynamic. And he's a serviceable blocker, even though he wasn't asked to do it a lot in Florida. Yeah. He's a serviceable blocker, but you also can say Hunter Henry. Do you want to go out and get him? Running backs on the free agent market where you're not spending, where you can go young on defense.
Isn't Saquon a free agent?
No.
Next year?
If they don't pick up the 5th-year option.
I'd say he's going to his 5th year, right?
Yeah.
4th year.
So,
never mind.
But there's a lot of names out there. There's 2 running backs out of Green Bay that are going to be free agents.
Yeah.
Williams and Jones. There's many.
And they like that Dillon kid.
Yeah. And there's many wide running backs out there. There's also a lot of wide receivers out there. Do you want to move on from a John Brown, who you overpaid for when you needed him the most, but you have Diggs, you don't really need Brown.
And they're still running Beasley too, who was a 1,000-yard receiver
exactly.
this year.
So do you want, so skill positions, they're decent, but tight end is big. But I would really, in the draft, I would spend my draft picks on defense. And because their O-line is decent, and your O-line is made better because Allen can move. But I don't know if it's just Buffalo is in a danger spot for me because of the fact that their window easily could start to close as soon as you pay Allen. So I really think you need to get that young depth in there, where instead of free agents that you're paying for, you got to save that money, go and pay Allen, which I don't see any scenario where you don't pay him.
You have no choice.
Again, is he worth the money he's going to get? We've had this discussion many times. No. But I do believe Buffalo's in a dangerous spot because if they don't get young depth, they're going to be in trouble very soon.
Well, that's the thing, too. They're going to have to pay Josh Allen, but here's my rebuttal to everything. Is any quarterback really worth it?
No.
But the market says you have to pay it.
Right.
And based off of what the other quarterbacks around him are getting paid and what he brings to the table, there's no reason you can't pay him $38+ million. You're going to have to.
He's different than, in my opinion, somebody like in the same draft class, Lamar. Mm-hmm. Right now, I would pay Allen. I would extend Allen now versus would I extend Jackson? No. And the reason is because Jackson hasn't shown me improvement in the last 3 years, where Allen has gotten better every year.
And I think a lot of it has to do with just what kind of quarterback do you like. That's a big thing. Just do you like more of a pass running back?
But he did pass the ball a lot more this year than run.
He did.
So he has gotten better in that aspect. So, but Buffalo, excuse me, Buffalo to me is the best team in that division. And I think they are going to win the division again. It's just they need to go deep. To take that next step, they need a few key pieces to make that next step.
I think Buffalo is the best team in that division, but I think what could change is what does Miami do?
Right.
Miami was, 2 games behind them, and Miami didn't know their quarterback for half the season. They couldn't... If that's the one problem, Aaron, if you think about it, with what they had with no really real running back that's like a top perennial running back, they switched their quarterback every week, they still won 10 games.
Yeah.
So it's almost a thing like, I'm just using, let's bring up Deshaun, for example. If he does end up going there, I'm telling you, I'm not picking Buffalo as a favorite anymore. I'm not doing it.
That's
that's what you're about. So you want to get to Miami next?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good transition. So defensively, solid.
I don't think you need really any key pieces unless you want 3rd, 4th round, late round picks just to add depth.
Yep. And jeez,
Flemmy today, man. They sound like me.
So my big thing was that I wrote down is the most important, I believe, is wide receiver. Wide receiver, running back, tight end. They have Devontae Parker, who's very good.
I think you're sleeping on Gesicki.
He's good.
Yeah.
But you could, if you add somebody to him.
If you add another piece.
And he didn't stay as healthy as he should.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest with you, I wrote down QB. That's a big question mark. To me, the only reason why they had success this year once they went to Tua was because of their defense.
Yeah.
Tua never could sustain a drive down the field.
Yeah. If you watched his drives, he had a couple lightning flashes, but in general, he had a lot of 3 and outs.
Yes.
They went flat, and I think I agree with you with the exact positions, but I would probably not put tight end as high. I think their 3 positions they need help with are key positions. And I would address them very first with, if I was in charge, I would address my running back position first. I would do what I could to spend a 1st-round pick. If I didn't trade for Watson, I want a perennial running back. Maybe an ETN. I want one of those guys.
You could get them with your last first. Like, if you don't trade these picks.
If you give up all 3 firsts this year.
Oh, then, your first pick would be.
We need a running back. Yes. But if not, I want one of your first to be them. I think with your number 3 pick, if you are keeping your quarterback, I think that's an opportunity where you could think about taking that wide receiver. Right, but I think in general, for me, the Miami Dolphins need to target their running back first because they went to a running back on multiple drives last year, and I watched a few of their games. They didn't go anywhere. When you relied on the run, it's like Buffalo. I think Buffalo and Miami are both in the same position where they could use a solid running back, but I think the difference is Miami has the ability to use one better because Buffalo hasn't shown flashes of using a good running back.
Right.
And one good wide receiver will help. Devontae Parker's great. Preston Williams is great. I just think they need...
Isn't there a Wilson on the team, too?
Albert Wilson.
Albert, something like that.
Yeah,
so
he's been around
serviceable.
Forever. But they just need... I think bringing in that, if they don't trade... Let's say, Houston lets them keep their number 10 pick or whatever it is.
Number 3.
Yeah, they're number 3. I know that won't happen. But they trade 3 other picks for Deshaun Watson. That's the pick right there, that very first pick. I would be targeting Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith. I think that's his name. That's the thing. I think the difference with Buffalo is their key positions, their skill positions are great. I think on offense, the problem is for Miami, their skill positions are good and serviceable. But I think with a little bump, that defense stays exactly the same. This team could be deadly.
The thing is with their positional players, the wide receiver, the tight end, and the running backs, all played better when Fitz was in the game.
Yes.
Tua did not make the throws Fitz made.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, and he wouldn't. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Fitz is Fitz his whole career has been the type of person I'm going to fit it in there, whether you like it or not, and hopefully you catch it.
Yeah,
but
going back to what Mark just said, you said doesn't mean he couldn't. We just don't know. There's not enough tape on Tua to know anything really about him. We don't know what his skill really is because we didn't get to see it.
And that's the thing with Miami. The quarterback position is the most important position on the football team. Yeah. And their defense carried them last year. They had so many drives where they were on the other side of the field because of their defense. Interceptions, fumble recovery, sacks. That defense played unbelievable last year. And the offense... It was hit or miss. And on games where they blew teams out, it was because they had more turnovers and they had less field to go. It wasn't because their offense just kept going down the field.
Yep.
They are a perfect example of a Baltimore to me, where when you're in front,
you're good.
You're dominant.
Yeah.
When you're not, you're suspect.
Yeah.
So it's, this draft is going to be very interesting. This offseason for them is going to be very interesting. If they get a Deshaun, I could see players deciding, hey, you know what? That's a destination I want to go.
Plus, it's nice in Miami.
And, so if I'm a free agent wide receiver, I'd go. or tight end or running back or, and Miami has that money to take on those contracts.
They surprisingly have a lot of cap.
So Miami's going to be one of the most interesting teams this year because there is no step back. The rebuild's over. Like you need to progress from 10 wins now.
That's why I was saying they're in the exact same boat as Buffalo. You're not in the same category as your other two division mates. One of your division mates is trying to figure out what the hell they're doing in the middle, and the other one is absolutely in rebuild mode.
Yep.
But these two teams, you have a small window. It's the same window we talked about last year before we even started the show. The same window that Dallas and Philly are in. You're in a small window, and you have to figure this out now. I think we know which route Philly's going. But I don't, you know what I mean, with the Dallas situation. We don't know what they're doing. But Philly, we understood they decided to go the rebuild route.
Yep.
These two teams are only about 2 or 3 years away because if you pay a Josh Allen and you don't get it done in that time, it's going to be a lot like the Baltimore Ravens.
In 2-3 years, Buffalo could be getting rid of Allen and starting over.
Instead could be a lot
making a run of making a Super Bowl or,
They could be to me in the next 2 to 3 years exactly what happened to the Ravens after they paid Flacco.
Yes.
Same situation. You didn't get it done before you paid him, and that could be Dallas' situation.
Yeah.
You don't know. Unfortunately, you're paying now these quarterbacks for what you hope they bring to you.
Yes.
But you don't know. And unfortunately, it should be the point when you tell a quarterback, hey, you haven't won a Super Bowl, I'm going to pay you $20 million. You know what I mean? You can't do that.
And people will say, well, Mahomes got paid. Mahomes won a Super Bowl.
That's the thing.
Mahomes made it to an AFC championship game, made it to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, made it to a Super Bowl, and lost the Super Bowl.
Plus, if he didn't win a playoff game, the way he plays is just different.
Yeah.
He's worth it.
At the same time, do you extend him so fast if he doesn't win playoff games? No. Or you don't pay him as much as what you paid. Now,
surprisingly, that's not that rich of a deal. If you look at it, it's very friendly.
It's very friendly, and it's always renegotiable after a few years and everything. So, but New England, you brought up the next two teams. New England's interesting to me because they have 8 players coming back that took the year off because of COVID. Most of them are on defense. Some of them are on the offensive line. And none of them are skill like offensive skill positions. Defensively, they're going to be fine, in my opinion, because of the players coming back and who they have, where you can give up a Gilmore in a trade to get more draft picks. You know, you can really be flexible on defense. Offensively, they are old, they are slow, and they have nothing that I can see that besides O-line, which is decent, but their top offensive lineman, I never know how to say his name, so I'm going to say Tooney. I don't think it's Thuney, but I think it's Tooney. He isn't a free agent, and he's already said he wants top money, and the Patriots aren't going to pay top money. And so the Patriots, to me, the most important thing is quarterback. You don't have a quarterback on your roster that's a starter, but at the same time, you need wide receiver, you need tight end, and their running backs, I'd probably say, are their best position on offense because they're a little deep at running back.
I think the Patriots' problem is skill position. Maybe not like corners and defensive skill positions, but on offense, skill position-wise, like I can't name their tight end. I can't name their wide receivers, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
and people like, well, Edelman's there, but like
McKeel Harry, but he never panned out.
He never panned out, and people like, you know, Dorsett was there, can't remember him. People like, what about this guy? And I was like, well, did Edelman even play? Running back wise, I know they got one dude from Alabama, but you never see him. I know they got White because he catches the ball like crazy, but in general, I know, but in general, you look at this team, you're like, their defense, I think, will help them. Their defense is gonna be a lot like Miami. Okay, but New England always has a good defense. Here's your problem: your quarterback.
Yeah,
it's your quarterback and your your people to catch the ball from your quarterback. So for me, what I think I would do if I was in New England situation is I would absolutely look for that quarterback in the second, third round, but not to start. If you have the opportunity to go after Derek Carr, if you want to go after it, I think you should also try to bring in somebody like Fitzpatrick if he's willing to play. If you don't want to go after a Carr, I think you should bring in a Fitzpatrick and draft that Alabama kid in the end of the first round, or draft somebody in the second round as a serviceable, hopefully next future quarterback. Or even better, this is what I actually like. I love this idea. Sign Jacoby Brissett, sign Fitzpatrick, bring them both in.
Yeah, you know
what I mean.
I think Brissett would be a good signing. Everybody's saying Brissett or Garoppolo because they were there and they had success in the system. But you're only as good as what you have around you. Yeah. And there's nothing to throw to there. There's nothing that you have confidence in.
But that's
on the
what
outside.
That's what you spend your cap space on.
But a very good question to ask is New England that destination anymore?
Well, it depends because it depends on the coach, right? Not the coach, sorry. It depends on who you are. Do you like to go somewhere to win rings? Do you like to go somewhere because, you know, they have nightclubs? Or do you like to go somewhere because they have a Hall of Fame coach? Some players do like coaches. There's a lot of players who didn't come to Dallas for years because they didn't like Jason Garrett. So people like, well, was McCarthy the right move? But there is players that do like him. So there you might be able to get people because of who Belichick is, and they want to be coached hard. They want to be... Yep. I'm not saying it's everybody. More than likely, half these players, I'd say 80%, want to win a ring, and they want to have a nightlife, and they want to have fun. And it's cold as hell in New England. So it's not a desirable place if Brady's not there.
Right, and that's the thing. They're not... I mean, you can't even say they're playoff contenders going into into next season.
But this is the thing.
You would like to say that they are going to be on the fringe because of Belichick, but you can't say that they are going to be even close, especially with the two teams in front of them. You know, and the other teams in the AFC that are so much younger and more prepared to make the playoffs than they are.
No, I agree. That's the thing is I think with that defense and I think with Bill Belichick in general, this team can be still really relevant. I mean, they could have 8 wins next year. It's just you got to figure out the other key positions.
Yep. New York Jets, I wrote this down, and I even put LOL after it. But most important need is all defense and all offense. They need everything, except O-line. Their O-line is very good.
Yeah.
But you need running back, wide receiver, tight end, and a QB. You need defensive line, a linebacker, and a secondary. They were the worst team by 18 points for point differential. They were the only team over 200 in point differential.
That's trash.
That is awful. They weren't even but here's the thing. They were the worst offense by far in scoring points, but they weren't even the worst defense giving up points. Like, so there was 5 teams that gave up more points than them.
I bet I can name one of them.
Well, Dallas was on there, yes. But like Jacksonville gave up less points per game. Like, their point differential was 18 points better than you.
I'll be honest with you. If Jacksonville, we'll get to them, if Jacksonville had a decent enough quarterback last year, they'd have won at least 5 games.
Yes.
The fact is their quarterbacks were trash, and it's not even close. The whole Gardner mustache thing, too much.
Yeah.
We can stay on the Jets thing. My thing with the Jets is I like their offensive line a lot. I do think Herndon can become a great tight end, maybe a really good tight end, like a top 8 tight end on the level of Hawkinson. Like, eventually, I think that's a level he can be. But this is the thing. The coach they have in Saleh, people like him.
Yes.
He's a people's coach. But again, this goes back to what you just said about New England. Do people want to go there because of a coach? I don't know that. It is New York. It is the Big Apple. It's the less sexy of the 2 New York teams in the city. But this is the thing. We can't predict. This is hard for us to do the offseason here, like talk like this, because the Jets have so many options. Do they go with Sewell, the tackle?
Right.
Do they go with a Jamar Chase? Do they go with that wide receiver? Do they freaking shoot the ladder, and do they take a quarterback?
Right.
We don't know. We can only say obviously what we think, and I think their best opportunity there is to take a wide receiver, or Sewell. I think those are your 2 best options there. The reason
I was going to say defense. I was going to say that kid Parsons from Penn State.
Parsons at number 2, it's kind of a reach, but he is the best linebacker in the draft. But if you're the Jets and you want to keep Darnold's going to want a wide receiver. He's going to need somebody more serviceable than what they have.
Yeah.
So let's say you spend free agency, okay? When you draft a quarterback, they have to play for you. When you go to free agency, they don't have to play for you. So it might be easier to lure a wide receiver in through the draft and sign him than finding a free agent. You might be able to find a free agent running back easier.
Well, there's a perfect example of how I would sell people to go to the Jets. Is Flores in Miami. They didn't bring in a ton of free agents. They did on defense. I believe they brought in Rhodes. I believe they brought in that kid from Dallas, Smith, cornerback. Mm-hmm. Is his name Smith? Last name Smith?
The cornerback from Dallas?
Yeah, that was a free agent in Miami, signed him.
Byron Jones,
sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, you have me confused. Yep. They have like 5 Dallas players on their team, so I forgot.
That Flores made the difference there. It changed the culture. Mm-hmm. He demanded you to play, and everybody on the team got better because of the coach. And that could happen with the Jets. They're young enough, and I hate to say young and dumb enough, but they're young and dumb enough to be a 5-win team this year coming up without making a huge splash in free agency where if you're a free agent, I would look at it like this. I'll wait and see. I'll wait and see what they do. Where, like the same thing with Miami, they had to overpay. What everybody said, you said it too. They overpaid Byron Jones to go there. But it was worth it because he made that difference.
He did.
Now you look at Miami as a free agent destination. They have the money and they're young enough, but they're also good enough right now. Where you look at the Jets and you could say the same thing. They're young enough. Can we go there? Let's see what the coach does. Let's see if this coach is for real.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I'm a big Darnold fan. And I think if you extend Darnold, you can extend him for really low money.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to overpay Darnold to stay. Because I don't think there's a market for Sam Darnold to start anywhere in the NFL but the Jets. And if you think he's the guy, why not? Exactly. Why not extend him? You have the 5th-year option this year. And I think the number 2 pick is not a quarterback that you should draft. You're reaching at number 2 for a quarterback.
I agree, because I think there's only one quarterback light years ahead of all the others.
Yes.
Again, this is coming from, I think somebody's probably going to end up reaching, either there's going to be too many quarterbacks early or not enough quarterbacks early, right? Does that make sense? But I don't want to say the other quarterbacks aren't good. It depends on who's listening to the show and what kind of quarterbacks they like. I only like 2 quarterbacks in this draft, and the only quarterbacks' names are Kyle Trask and Trevor Lawrence. But I don't think Trask is going to be a top 10, top 15 pick.
No.
I think with a lot of his stuff, his pro day stuff in his last few games, he's going to be a second-round guy, and that's somebody like the Patriots could look into, something like that. But I think the hard part is we're hyping up the quarterback class of this rookie class, and I don't think they're as good as...
Well, they always do.
They always do.
Like, for some reason, and there's a lot of teams that need quarterback.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of teams that are getting rid of quarterbacks. And I'd rather have Darnold than any one of the guys besides Lawrence that you named.
Yeah.
I'd rather have him. And just for the simple fact that he is somebody you know what you have, but technically you don't.
And what you're paying Darnold versus what you're going to have to pay a free agent. There's no reason to move on from when you know your team isn't good enough to go after Watson.
Right.
You know your team's not good enough for a Dak. Your team's not good enough for some of these quarterbacks. So why not stick with the quarterback who's safe and is doing well, bring some serviceable options around him, fill it in, and go from there. So that's the way I look at that.
Yeah. So the AFC South is a very interesting division because Tennessee, Indy, both 11-5. But I think only one of them is a legit 11-5. I think one of them took advantage of just having a good regular season, but having major flaws on that team. Tennessee has major flaws. Defensively, they are just suspect at best. But the big thing for them is both their wide receivers, Davis and Brown, are free agents. Are you going to franchise tag one of them and wickedly overpay for a year of service, or are you going to try to sign one of them and still be suspect on D? You can't get both of them won't re-sign. You can't afford them, in my opinion.
So you re-sign A.J. Brown, which I think is the better of the two options, and then you work on your defense.
And you work on your defense, but defensively, you're going to have to work on it in the draft.
Yeah,
because you're not going to be able to afford free agents in defense, because
unless they sign veterans that are like in their 30s, you know what I mean, like the Clay Matthews that are out there, those kind of guys that are out there still.
Yeah.
The older, even if it was a Watt, who I still think is past his prime, people like that. If you bring those guys in, I think those are the options you're looking for. But is that even worth it?
I don't think so.
Jeez,
I think they. Sorry, I think they have too many holes on defense. Where this offense is going to take a step back because you are losing one of these wide receivers. And the playoff game against Baltimore really showed how both wide receivers were so important for this offense. Because once Corey Davis went down, their offense was suspect at best. Because you could double cover Brown, and then you could stack the box against Henry. And they couldn't overcome that. And tight end is weak for them. I think it's one of those things where Tennessee's in trouble, where it's almost like the window closed. I don't think it did, but it really depends on this offseason. Because, yes, Henry's good, but how much more is Henry going to be able to do a 2,000-yard season? And how's Tannehill going to do with only one wide receiver to throw to? And that's the thing.
Well, that's the thing. Your window's not that long on your success window. Does that make sense? You don't have as long of a window of success as people think. Is Henry your guy for 5+ more years? Well, I remember the way we ran DeMarco Murray. I mean, if you run somebody similar, he reminds me a lot of him. You're
playing with fire on when that shoe drops that he's no longer able to run over.
It's only a matter of time for an Achilles, an ACL. I don't wish that, but a big injury on him, and he's not going to be the same running back, and he's going to be sitting there getting $15 million a year.
But he could. There is the possibility that Derrick Henry is an Adrian Peterson type.
There's a chance.
It's a, in my opinion, a far off chance. But looking at this guy's numbers for the last couple years, he's putting up numbers that you haven't seen in the running back position in a long time, and doing it in a way that isn't done in today's NFL.
Yeah.
Today's NFL isn't that bruiser back that's going to run straight up the middle and hurt you.
And that hasn't been for a while, yeah.
No, it is the guy that the what they used to call the scat back. The quick little, back that, sneaks out of the backfield, catches the ball, or, is able to get you good runs on the outside, or gets lost on the inside. But he's doing it, and it is scary because you think, okay, Emmitt Smith did it for so many years, but the last few years for Emmitt Smith were a shell of himself. Adrian Peterson wants to keep playing. That's fine, but you're not a number one running back anymore. And Derrick Henry is his best still to come, which would be scary. Yeah. Or did we see his best the last 2 years, and he's going to plateau for a couple years and then take a nosedive? But Tennessee, in my opinion, is in trouble.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very scary. Like you said, that window. And everybody's like, oh, well, the Patriots did it for 20 years. Or, Kansas City's done it for the last three. They're built different. They're coached different. And Kansas City, I don't care who you are, they have the best tight end in the league. They have a top 5 wide receiver in the league. They have the best quarterback in the league. And their defense is serviceable. But when they get punched in the mouth, you saw what happened in the Super Bowl. Yeah. So you can't say that Kansas City is going to go on this run of winning Super Bowl. Everybody said Seattle was going to win multiple Super Bowls.
When your O-line sucks terribly, you're not going to win a Super Bowl.
Right, and then Seattle went back-to-back, and they lost to the Patriots, and they haven't gone back since.
Should have ran the ball.
Yeah, of course they should have. That was horrible coach play. That was a horrible... It was a horrible play call, horrible coaching, but it was a horrible throw. You don't throw that ball. You have to see that cornerback there. So it's one of those things where it's very tough in the NFL to be relevant for 5 years, let alone for more than 5 years. So let's see what these teams do. And I'm sorry, Tannehill's, not a Mahomes. Tannehill's not an Allen. Tannehill needs help. And it's going to be interesting to see, is this a destination that free agents want to go, knowing you're going to run the ball first and throw the ball second, and defensively is so suspect. They can't go out and get an Allen Robinson. They can't go out and overpay Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. They have to spend their money on defense, and I don't think they have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, I have no idea what their cap space is.
But I think they are, and then Indy is an 11-5 team, and they have every position stocked at very well, except QB, because they don't have a QB on their roster.
To be fair, I actually don't think their wide receivers are as good as they're cracked up to be.
They're young. They're young.
They're getting there.
And T.Y. Hilton showed at the end of the year that he's still T.Y. if he's healthy.
I don't know what happened all year with that dude.
He was hurt.
All year?
He played hurt.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where he couldn't get a good rapport with Phillip Rivers. But then you saw at the end of the season, he put up numbers. And he was healthy. So the young wide receivers, the rookies, they're speedsters. They're very good at catching the ball. Phillip Rivers made them look good.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do at quarterback? No other position. You're young enough and good enough on defense.
Running backs are great.
Your running back Taylor, you hit the jackpot with Taylor.
Yep.
And so the question is you have serviceable tight ends. You could always use a tight end, to be honest. But you're not paying attention to any single free agent in the market unless it's a QB.
I agree. I think almost every team could probably use a good tight end too. I agree with you 100%. And they'd be the kind of team I would watch for that late first round quarterback pick. That kid from Alabama, that Kyle Trask pick. That's the team I'd watch out for. And I wouldn't be surprised they also bring in a veteran too. I wouldn't be surprised on that.
If they don't get a veteran, not even just serviceable,
because they're in a playoff window.
Yes, and if you miss on the quarterback, all these young players that you have go to waste.
Yeah, it means nothing.
Yeah, it means absolutely nothing. You need, in my opinion, they should have gone harder after Stafford.
I agree.
They should be really kicking the tires on Wentz because they have the offensive line and running game to really make Wentz look good.
Well, that's the thing, and it's not me saying it. Is Wentz still a good quarterback? It's hard to tell. When I think they'd probably be better off going after Carr, Derek Carr.
Okay.
If he's still available, if they're still offering to trade him, that's someone I would go after just because I feel like he's better than Wentz, less injury history. Mm-hmm. And I think he would be the better quarterback to lead a 10-6 team right back into the playoffs again. Yeah. But that's the thing. It all goes down to if Wentz gets traded, if Carr gets traded. Yep. These are all going to be so expensive deals and Watson deals that some of these teams like Indy might be like, we don't want to give up our capital. All of our draft picks are in the late 20s. That's not enough to give up for one of these dudes. We're going to have to bring in, re-sign Brissett, and we're going to have to, or we'll have to sign somebody. Yeah. Dallas may not sign Dak, and if you're Philly, you're Indianapolis, you're jumping him down with joy if he doesn't get re-signed by Dallas because that's a situation you need.
Yeah.
But like they remind me of the Patriots a little bit, okay, but their record's obviously better. you want to bring in a good veteran and you want to bring in a young guy. And you preferably don't want either one of them to be expensive. If you don't have to be.
Here's the thing. Indy's so young that you can overpay the quarterback position right now. Like, you could take on a contract like a Garoppolo or a Cousins, and you could trade like a late first round for one of those guys. Like, I don't think either one of those two, say, is going to be as expensive as Carr or I can't remember who you just said, Wentz. I don't think they're going to be as expensive because they're a little bit older. And they're not Garoppolo's not older, but they're not as sought after for some reason. For me, Garoppolo would be a huge get for any team. Especially a team that is built like San Francisco was. Great running back, great O-line, serviceable wide receivers, and that is what Indianapolis is. If you put Garoppolo on that team, I could see them making the AFC Championship game. I just see that out of Garoppolo. I don't see numbers out of Garoppolo. I don't see flashiness out of Garoppolo. I see serviceability out of Garoppolo.
I can understand that.
And Kirk Cousins, you don't know if Kurt, whatever his name is,
I think it's Kirk with a K.
Kirk.
I'm not sure.
He's
just Kirk.
You sort of know what you have with Kirk Cousins.
He's the younger Fitzpatrick.
I don't even think he's that, because he can't win.
I guess you're right.
You know what you have. Like, besides the miracle in New Orleans, against New Orleans. See, he won his first Monday Night Football game this year.
I think for me, he would be the perfect bridge quarterback for me. Does that make sense? The perfect quarterback bridging a team between being bad and being a couple years away from being good while you have a rookie. Like somebody like New England, Kirk Cousins and a rookie together. Yeah. That would be the situation where you don't need a great quarterback right now. You don't need a terrible quarterback, but bringing in that middle tier, top 20 quarterback, top 15 quarterback, and I'm sorry if people don't like that. Kirk Cousins, they never showed me anything overly spectacular.
Yeah.
But bringing in somebody like him for $25 million or whatever it is he's going to want, that doesn't hurt many teams. He probably ain't even going to get that.
You have to trade for him, and he's close to $40 million this year.
Is he?
Yeah.
I thought he was a free agent. I'm sorry.
No, he's guaranteed. His contract was his agent. He should still be getting his agent like yachts, because this man totally negotiated for him to get a fully guaranteed contract. And I believe the last 2 years is close to $40 million.
Oh, that's it.
And it's crazy. Like, this man is, he's serviceable. Don't get me wrong, he's serviceable, but I don't think you win championships with him.
I don't either.
Then I'm going to bring up Jacksonville first. So Jacksonville, biggest need is QB, but they're drafting Lawrence. If you don't draft Lawrence, you should be fired. Like, seriously, I think Urban Meyer and whoever the GM is should be fired if they don't take Trevor Lawrence.
I agree.
Skill position wise on offense, they're decent. They have some good talent there, and it's young. And defense is the key for them right now. I think after you take Lawrence, you use your other first-round pick on defense, and every other pick after that you use on defense. And you hope you can get veterans to come sign with you to play with Lawrence.
I think really for Jacksonville, I agree with you 100%. For me, I think you get Lawrence. I think your late-round pick needs to be a linebacker, outside linebacker, corner. I think all those would help. And then I think after that, you go defense. Their O-line seems to be okay.
Yeah.
Maybe a third or fourth round.
They did give up almost 3 sacks per game. It wasn't the worst. Yeah. They were bottom 10.
So I would maybe take your second round pick, get all O-linemen. After that, go all defense. But I think they can hit fire with, what do they have? DJ Chark. They have somebody else. Is it Connolly? Is that another wide receiver for them?
The wide receiver came out of nowhere, unrestricted free agent this year, and it was an unrestricted. He wasn't even drafted; he was just brought in. After the draft, and he really did play well.
I think out of those two, and then I think also bringing in, if you were able to sign an A.J. Brown, I think you're able to bring in a Robinson, one of those top perennial free agents. You have $80 million in cap, spend the $12 million, overpay. overpay for one of those free agent wide receivers that Baltimore is going to go after, that DC is going to go after. Bring that dude in so that you got great young DJ Chark, you've got James Robinson, your running back. You bring in Allen Robinson or Galladay or one of those dudes. I even use Michael Gallup if he's there. Some of these guys, and I think honestly Jacksonville could win 6-7 games next year.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville is moving up.
They're trending very up, like Miami was last year.
Yeah, but not that. They're not going to make that jump.
Not big of a jump like Miami did.
But at the same time,
they have the quarterback.
They're going to have the quarterback.
Hope. But we're more than likely, we're going to sit here and say this guy's going to be the Burrow-Herbert deal. We don't think he might even be better. We're not calling bust on this dude, not even close.
No.
He's way too talented.
He can make, he's special. Like you said, he's special.
Think about it. Let's do this before we go to the next team where we finish up with Jacksonville. Go down the list from team top 1 all the way to 32. How many teams in the league right now would get rid of their quarterback for the opportunity to have the number 1 pick? If Jacksonville just said, give me your 1, I'll give you number 1 overall. Every team but Kansas City?
No.
And Green Bay?
No.
And Tampa?
No.
But what, you're saying 25 plus teams would go for that?
I would probably say 20 to 25 teams
That's
would take Lawrence over who they have.
And 25 teams wouldn't have done that for Burrow and Herbert and Tua. That's why this guy's different.
And Miami's in there that I would say they would take Lawrence, but I don't think Cincinnati would. I don't think the Chargers would.
Yeah, but you know what I mean in general.
Yeah, but like you said, Green Bay isn't over Rodgers.
This guy
Mahomes
is different.
Yes.
So I predict this guy is going to be the 30 touchdown rookie, just like the Herbert year. And again, I say Herbert because Burrow was injured. Burrow's year could have been just as crazy. We don't know.
Yeah.
That these young quarterbacks are just. This league's about to be crazy with young talent.
Yes.
And it's not even funny, dude.
No,
it's going to be 2 years from now, and Dak's a veteran. Think about that.
Well,
that's where we're going.
To be honest with you, in the AFC, we talked about it
last week.
We talked about it, how young the AFC is at quarterback.
Yeah,
it's absolutely insane to me to see how young these guys are. Where you're looking at Allen, Darnold being veterans in the AFC because in Baker Mayfield, because they're going to be Tannehill is,
he'd definitely be the oldest guy in the division.
Tannehill's older than Watson.
Yeah. Carr and Tannehill were the same.
Yeah, Big Ben is the oldest by far, but quarterback. Yeah. I think Tannehill might be getting to 30 or in his 30s. Carr is getting to 30. He's not 30 yet, but it is absolutely ridiculous. And then you look on the other side of the ball where Rodgers, Breeze, Brady are owning the NFC, and they're almost 40, all three of them.
But one's over 40.
Two of them are.
Oh, you said almost. Yeah.
Yeah, Breeze and Brady are over 40, and Rodgers, I think, is going to be 39 going into next season.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how young and scary the AFC is at quarterback, but also the young quarterback talent in the league.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. It's fun to see because you never saw that before.
No.
Because teams would draft a quarterback and they'd be bad.
Yeah.
Or they would draft a quarterback and they'd sit for years. And so it's fun to watch. The last team, Houston.
Yeah. What the hell?
They need? What don't they need? They need a new owner. They need a new president. They need a new coach. They need a new GM. And they just hired their coach. And an interesting stat.
Who did they hire again?
They hired... the
wide receivers coach for the Ravens?
Yes.
Great signing.
He...
Because they throw the ball so much.
He was the coach offensive wide receivers coach for the Kansas City Chiefs when right before Bieniemy took over.
When they didn't have a single passing touchdown the whole year.
Touchdown to a wide receiver all year.
Yep.
And then he goes to Baltimore, and he's the wide receivers coach there, and they have the least amount of wide receiver touchdowns in the league. And now he's a head coach. I don't know what Houston is thinking. I don't know what they are doing. They need everything. And they need to trade Watson. They need to. They
should get what they can.
You got to get the rebuild. You can't rebuild if you do not trade him. So you're looking at absolute ass if you don't trade him.
I can't say I don't enjoy Houston being bad. I love when Houston sucks being a Dallas fan, but I can tell you their best option is getting rid of Watson and letting him enjoy his Hall of Fame Pro Bowl career somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't need to be in Houston.
They're
bad. They've been bad. We had the same conversation years ago about the Jets. They're bad. They've been bad. We had the same conversation a few years ago about the Browns. They're bad. They've been bad. DC, they're bad. They've been bad. And these teams are all starting to make the come up. Now Houston's a new one. Houston could be the next DC team. Could be the next Browns team for the next few years. This isn't a 3-year rebuild. They're in a half a decade rebuild right now. It's not going to be a quick thing. No. This ain't Madden, guys.
It's one of those things where you have to hope you hit. So you trade for Watson for, say, 3 firsts. Mm-hmm. You have to hit on all 3.
You have to.
You can't miss. Like, the picks you miss on are later on. Mm-hmm. You can't miss. You need to catch 5. You need to hope that one of your late round picks is, very good.
Or your undrafted free agents become good.
Right. Because you're not getting free agents. The way old players, the way current players are talking about this organization, you're not getting free agents to come there. I don't care how much you overpay them. You're not getting them to come there. And you don't have money.
Yeah.
It's not like you have money to spend right now, even though they did cut J.J. Watt.
Even trading Watson, you're still negative.
Right. And
because
so
of the cap hit.
It's not like you can go out and get free agents right now. And it is sad to see, because a couple years ago, people were talking about them being Super Bowl contenders or AFC champion contenders, top of the AFC, and that cliff came quick.
Yeah, that ship done sailed.
But those are the 8 teams we talked about this week. We'll talk about the rest of the AFC next week, and then we'll get into the NFC and everything. But be interesting to hear what any of you guys have to say about who you disagree with or anything. Hit us up on Facebook. Let us know.
Yeah.
But it is going to be, like we've said from the beginning of this season, this offseason is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be probably the best offseason that I can remember in a few years.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I have a lot of excitement for it, and I'm watching it, and I just want other players other than Dak, other than Watson, to be talked about, because I think those two are big time players, and it's the dominoes, and Wentz too.
Yeah.
But once those dominoes fall, there's a lot of quality players out there that are going to make a huge difference on teams. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be fun to watch. One thing I want to bring up is, and something I know you and Logan are the only two probably that listen, that pay attention. The Daytona 500 is a dumpster fire right now.
Why?
Because it's the Super Bowl of NASCAR racing. Mm-hmm. Okay, I love that it's the first race. Yeah. I've always loved that it's the first race. It's the only race I pay attention to. Mm-hmm. But you know why it's unwatchable?
Why?
Because 14 laps in, half the field's gone.
Okay, well,
50 laps in, the other half of the field's gone, and there's one car going around the track. It's like watching Cars the movie, where only 3 cars are racing around the track to win.
So
it's awful. Like, they spread it out. They got to shorten the track again. You can't go 3 wide in NASCAR and have a successful race.
You can go 3 wide when all the cars survive to the end. The problem was the big wreck happened at lap 15. The other big wreck happened at lap 199. Okay, it was the last lap of the race. It didn't happen at lap 50.
Okay, but my thing is you lose half your cars.
Well, I'm going to sit here.
15 laps in. That is awful.
I'm going to sit here.
Awful.
Logan, I know, listen to this. I'm going to sit here and blame that kid that replaced my driver, Christopher Bell, needs to get his life together. He caused that wreck because he's a rookie. He doesn't know what he's doing.
But 3 wide drafting like they're doing, they wanted to make it more exciting.
Yeah.
And what they did was they made it irrelevant. Like, literally, Daytona has become irrelevant.
Do you realize that nobody likes watching the cars go around for 300 laps with no wrecks?
Yeah, but the thing is you can have a wreck where a couple cars go out, but when you literally lose half the field, and last year the same thing happened, the year before the same thing happened. So ever since they've gone 3 wide on that track, it has become awful.
But they didn't go 3 wide in that wreck. Either one of the wrecks weren't 3 wide.
But it is unwatchable. Daytona 500 has become unwatchable because it is like you even lose. Say it's 14 laps in, you don't even have the best drivers or the favorite drivers up at the front yet.
That's the point of the 500.
So you lose all these guys, and then Mr. Irrelevant wins because he's the only car on the track.
Well, there was 21 cars on the track.
Out of how many?
30 out of 40 cars.
Okay, so you have half the field gone.
But that's only the 500s like that. Every other race, all 40 cars finish.
Right, but you have this is your Super Bowl.
But 10 million
people. That's like saying you're going to lose in the first minute of the game. In the first 2 drives of the game, you're going to lose Brady and Mahomes for the game.
Yeah.
But that's different.
But that's people sign up for this. They sign up for that. They know that's what happens.
But that's why NASCAR is like, yes, you have your diehard fans.
Yeah.
But the casual fan that wants to watch Daytona 500 isn't watching anymore because it's unwatchable.
Well, the casual fan that used to watch isn't. The ratings are higher than every major league sport besides football right now. And the reason is because of new drivers, Michael Jordan in the sport. I can tell you, I bet they had 10 million viewers for that sport this weekend.
Yeah,
I guarantee
and none of them will get. You won't have the new 10 million because it's unwatchable. Like that's the thing. Like it's a shame because the Daytona 500 used to be something that even no NASCAR fan watched.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
My dad never watched a NASCAR race ever in his life except the Daytona 500. And he watched it every year. Like it would be on the TV. We would be walking around doing something else, but we'd always watch it. And then the last 10 laps was always the most exciting and always what you would watch.
And it was always chaos and death.
And it wasn't always chaos, but you always had a exciting finish.
Yeah.
And now, again, I'm going to stress it, losing half the field. Losing half the field is a major blow, and you have to fix that for your Super Bowl.
So let me tell you this. And how do you fix it? How do you fix the second place?
You narrow the track. You don't go 3 wide.
But they weren't 3 wide, Mark.
It doesn't matter. Most of the wrecks happen at the Daytona 500 because they're 3 wide and people trying to sneak their way in.
When those big wrecks happen and a 3 wide is on the last lap is when they go 3-4 wide to shoot to the finish line. I can promise you for 200, and Logan can test this, for 200 straight laps, it's 2 wide, 2 lanes, up high, down low.
But for you to defend the Daytona 500 losing half their cars and saying
we know that's the point.
But no, it's not the point. NASCAR racing isn't to you. You should not be sitting there going, "Oh, I hope we lose half the field today so we have more viewers."
No, the point of the Daytona 500 is to be one of the cars remaining at the end. This happens every year.
But the thing is you can't for your main event. For your main event, you can't have a race where half your cars aren't in it every year.
But that's every year since it was created in the 60s.
It was not, because I can tell you flat out that when I would watch it as a kid and watch it through when I was your age and everything, you did not lose half your cars. You lost a couple cars every race, but everybody finished the race except for a few, not half.
We also wouldn't have lost 12 cars in that wreck if the infield wasn't soaked with water. When they got there, their bumpers hit water and they flipped their cars. It wouldn't have happened as bad. But you got to remember, too, Dale Earnhardt Sr., himself, finished more races wrecked in the 500 than finished them.
Okay.
He was one of many. A lot of people you don't remember.
But he didn't take out... But half the field didn't wreck in those years.
And usually when the wrecks happen, and any fan will contest this, when they happen, it's usually not the second-place driver causing it on lap 14. That's why the whole pack got taken out with him. That's so rare. So this is what I want to ask you. Would you rather watch a Daytona 500 that has almost the 3rd straight winner in a row in Denny Hamlin, or a new guy winning it on the last lap?
Always a new guy.
So, but you said in some nobody won. He's not a nobody. He's been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah.
He's just not on a big, rich team.
I want some nobody to win it.
That's the purpose of this race.
That wins it when almost all the cars finish.
I would love to see all the cars finish.
Because I don't care if Denny Hamlin wins it 3 straight years in a row when 50% of the cars don't finish.
If Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch didn't cause the wreck on lap 14 by bumping into each other 2 wide on turn 3, and it didn't happen in second place, if that happened in 30th, usually when the wrecks happen, it's in the back. Some no-name driver causes it. But since it was in second place and they were all going 200 on turn 3, that's the smallest part of the track is turn 3. You can barely have 3 cars wide. It took the whole field out with it. And everybody went, this doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it happens. You can't change it. And I don't think it makes it unwatchable. I think it makes it more desirable because people like seeing when the big one happens.
Yeah, okay. So it's just like hockey. Yeah. People like to watch hockey for the fight. Back in the day, they used to watch it for the fights. But when they fought, they came back.
Yeah.
Like, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like,
6 of those cars would have came back if the infield wasn't soaking with water. I can promise you that.
Okay.
Those cars got mangled.
But they didn't. Like, you can't, it's just like, it's Logan saying shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda won 10 games this year. No, you shoulda, woulda, coulda, you didn't.
The purpose of the 500 is to survive to the end with one-piece car.
Purpose of the 500 is to get casual NASCAR fans into NASCAR for the rest of the year. And you fail. You fail at it. You do, because now, it's your Super Bowl. Like, this is my point that I'm making. Like, I understand what you're saying. This wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have. It's your Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You need to make it so people will watch and it's exciting.
That's what they did, though.
It's not exciting watching 20 cars out of 40 finish.
Mark, I will ask anybody in the years of doing my job, anybody I have that's a casual fan or fans that have never watched NASCAR before, they said they can't wait to see the big wrecks happen on any track. It's what gets them involved. Nobody wants to see Jimmy Johnson lead 400 laps. Nobody wants to see it.
Just because you don't have a wreck doesn't mean somebody's leading 400 laps.
I know.
Okay,
but
if you want to get into the whole reason why some people want to get into NASCAR, it's the actual finesse of NASCAR. It's the actual let's see what they do with everybody on the track and how they draft and how they go into it and how they do that. But when you lose half the field, it takes away all the excitement and it takes away any skill.
But that doesn't happen every year. What happens is when one car gets bumped, I'm talking a bump like that, what I just did to your knee, was what wrecked the whole field. You're going 200 miles an hour. It happens. That's part of racing.
It happens but when you have the Super Bowl, okay, you have to fix it. You can't have, like, the Super Bowl would be unwatchable if you lose half like this year. So COVID happened this year. Do you think 90% of the people would have watched it if Mahomes, Brady, Kelsey, like all the top players, or say half of the top players had to sit out because of COVID?
But this is the thing. You expect your quarterbacks to be there for the Super Bowl.
And you expect 30 out of 40 cars to finish your Super Bowl.
And every year they do, just not this
year.
No, they don't. Yes, they do.
Last year they didn't either.
Last year, 29 cars finished on the lead lap.
Out of how many?
40.
Okay.
36 last year.
That's still
7 cars, that's it.
But you're still losing.
I know.
Okay, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, and the fact that NASCAR people, like, everybody does it. The casual fan just wants to see the wreck. Okay, the wreck happened. I turned it off. 14 laps in.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable for the biggest race of the year.
So how do you
it's
fix
unacceptable. You got to figure it out. Because
you said shorten the track.
Thin the track out.
Make the track out. That's going to be millions of dollars to shorten the track out.
Okay. You have millions of dollars.
But so
you just said NASCAR, is one of the most popular
this year. It has been. Okay, so let me ask you this: you said shorten the track, so you make it less likely to wreck at 200 miles an hour. So what is it going to be? One by one, like the video game pole position? Is that what it's going to be like?
No, you can still go too wide for many years.
I know.
In NASCAR, the Daytona 500 was too wide, and then they decided to make it wider, and it's become unwatchable. And even drivers said that the track is not good once they've widened it. So what are you doing for?
But I can tell you, out of the 200 laps I watched, maybe 10 of them had 3 wide. When they go 3 wide, they end up not getting in the draft, and they end up falling back to 20th. They try to make a third lane. It never works anymore. So when you go 3 wide, again, what I'm telling you is it happens. No other race all year will have this many wrecks. It doesn't happen like that. If it does, it's one car spinning out.
Okay, but none of the other races are your Super Bowl. Even the chase, even the end of the season, okay, where you're going for the championship, isn't as important as the Daytona 500.
Not in the way of hype, yes.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Like, the other races don't matter now. This is your Super Bowl. This is what you even advertise as your Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You can't, you have to fix it, because it makes it so casual fans won't watch.
I understand.
And you want to see the wreck because the wreck's fun, but then at the same time, if you want to pull viewers in and keep them engaged, they've done an excellent job of teaching people how to draft. Like, why is this successful? Why is this driver, and I've watched some races where they're explaining that. They're doing an excellent job with that. But when you lose half the field, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. You can't stop human error at 200 miles an hour, though. That's the problem. It happens.
It happens, yes.
But I've never seen a wreck happen on the 14th lap in second place. Usually somebody up that far doesn't cause it. That's the problem why it was so. But this is my other thing, too. I can promise you most of the fans, they didn't leave because of the wreck. They left because of the 6-hour rain delay. That's the problem. People watch it, even after the wrecks, bud. I promise you.
Okay.
I understand.
Not the casual fan.
Well, the casual fan they don't care about. The casual fans are
and
here.
that's awful. That's
They're here.
awful.
But
like the NFL, the casual fan
Yeah.
watches the whole Super Bowl. Why? Because they've made the commercials the most important. They
Yeah.
made the halftime show. And they make it so like people will sit there and watch the Super Bowl.
But they're not trying to bring the casual fan in all year. If they're going to do that, they did it by having their first Hispanic driver owned by Pitbull and their first black driver having an owner of Michael Jordan. That's how they're going to get the fans. They don't care about the race. That's not
The
intriguing.
casual
people.
fan doesn't care that Michael Jordan is a minority owner
You'd be
in a
surprised
team.
for a third of the Saints was there. Alvin Kamara was at the race. You're
Okay.
getting fans that have never. But Mark, what I'm saying is
Okay.
you're getting fans that have never been there, getting new casual fans involved. Whether
Okay,
it
so
wrecks them-
horse racing.
Yes.
Horse racing has the most celebrities show up for the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. It
yeah.
does not mean, just because celebrities are there, does not mean anything.
But there's a big difference in seeing your favorite idol going, I finally feel comfortable in the sport, showing up, and it attracts younger fans that don't look like me and you to show up.
The only way it matters is if more young black drivers come into the sport and are welcome, just like Bubba is.
Yeah.
And, that's the only way Michael Jordan being an owner makes a difference. Because
That's the point of it, is trying to convince people to get involved in sports, saying we've changed from where we used to be. But you're going to understand the 500 will still have a lot of wrecks. Every race after you watch, it's not going to happen.
Okay.
That's the point of it. You're going 200 miles an hour, bud. It's going to happen.
Then don't have your Super Bowl be that race.
Well, they always do it after the Super Bowl. I mean, after the actual Super Bowl, because it brings in all those fans from the Super Bowl who are sad there's no sports.
Right,
next
but don't
weekend.
advertise it as your Super Bowl.
Do they advertise this Super
Yes,
Bowl? They
it's the
advertise-
most important race of the year.
It is.
It has always been that way. And Daytona 500 was always special.
I would count it more along to me as more like the biggest celebrity type race here, because the chase is more important to most of the actual fans, not the casual fan. But I see what you're saying. I don't care much about this race. I
think if you poll the drivers,
Yeah.
I bet you if you poll the drivers, and a Daytona 500 is more important
Well, it is
to
because of
them
the money.
than winning the chase.
It's like winning getting the Masters. It's 3 times as much money as all the other races.
Yep.
But no, I understand what you're saying. I'm saying there's no way to fix it. You can't fix cars from wrecking.
But I mean, it's to me, it's just the reason why everybody says like where's the, like Nate always says, it's not a sport.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can see why he says that, because it's almost unwatchable, and I don't think, even if it's on the TV, I bet you people don't watch all the laps.
No, a lot of them don't. I understand. It's just like when there's 16 NFL games on, you don't watch all the games.
Yeah, but you always watch your favorite team.
Well, of course.
Okay, you
Yeah, I
always watch it.
understand.
You always watch the game, and if you're an NFL, if you love the NFL, even if your team isn't on, you're watching that game that's on.
And that's the thing. The casual fan won't. That's what I'm telling you with NASCAR is even my favorite driver wrecked at lap 15. I finished the whole race. I still watched it, even though my dude was in the pits tweeting about how mad he was that he got taken out by the dude that replaced him. I get what you're saying. I understand. You have to figure out a way, I agree with you, to figure out how to prevent the big wreck from happening at lap 15. But as a fan, the casual fan who knows nothing about NASCAR doesn't understand that that's what happens when one driver makes a bad mistake. It's just, it happens.
Okay.
And I don't know how you would fix that.
Okay.
You can't make the track smaller.
All right.
But I understand. So, what are we talking about next week?
The AFC North and the AFC West.
Okay.
And whatever else anybody puts on Facebook that they want us to talk about.
Yep, I'm going to do a lot better at giving you guys questions and keep asking stuff. Maybe we'll bring this topic into it and let you guys answer, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right.
All right, guys,
have a good week.
one.